calculated risks are okay. You have very little to lose as an entrepreneur when you take calculated risks. You can lose money, lose some time. In our case, you can lose some patients if you make a mistake. If you calculate the risks and you look at the equation, the risks are usually pretty small and easily recovered from.
Hi, everyone. My name is Eugene Shatsman, and I am excited to welcome you to the Power Hour. If you're just joining us this season, you're certainly in for a treat. As one of Optometry's longest-running shows and most listened-to podcasts, we've surveyed our listeners, and we're excited to kick off this season using your feedback. So the content we're going to bring you is content that is truly designed to help you find untapped potential, which means uncovering opportunities in your practice, showing you unique perspectives about the industry. And this season on the Power Hour, what we're going to do is going to have panel discussions around some of the industry's hottest topics. We're going to have guests from outside the industry so we can learn from them. And we're also going to engage in conversation with a variety of thought leaders and zoom in on some of the most incredible perspectives that are driving today's decision making. One more point is we're not just on audio this season. We're going to add video. You can find us on YouTube if you ever want to watch a bunch of people talking about eyes. Might be a great way to spend a Saturday afternoon. But again, I'm Eugene. My focus is to help facilitate these discussions and to bring you incredible guests. I'm open to feedback and I want to hear from our listeners. So as you listen to these shows, we're going to be very flexible, and you can reach me on the Power Hour website if you'd like. Personally, I love strategy. I love marketing. Really, I love anything and everything that helps you, our listeners, find untapped potential and make an impact on something that you do tomorrow. And, if you think about impact, today's show is incredible. And I am so honored to share the floor today with a man who's really making a tremendous difference in our industry, and somebody who's had an impact on so many practices, not just patients in his own practice, but the practices and the patients of so many other practices. He's a guy who founded the Power Practice. He's the guy who founded this podcast. And I guess initially it was a call-in radio show, right, Gary?
Yes.
The man needs little to no introduction. I think most of you who are listening to the show already know him. Gary Gerber, welcome to the Power Hour. It feels a little bit strange for me to be saying that, but Gary Gerber, welcome to the Power Hour.
Yeah, it's not strange for me. You get to do all the work. I get to have the fun, man, for a change. So I'm excited. Glad to be the kind of re-inaugural, I guess, the kind of relaunch, bigger, better, faster, brighter. So glad you're at the helm, Eugene. Excited.
Thank you. I'm excited, Gary. And, it was actually, as I was thinking about what we were going to talk about today, I actually went back to your very first show. And I don't know if you know this, but that show you did in 2012, 12 years ago.
Wow.
So
I was 23 years old at the time. Wow.
I mean, it was it was a call-in show for those who maybe not have been listening for 12 years straight. It was a call-in show, and I think it might have been some mechanics, and it was really fun to listen as you were trying to make audio adjustments on the fly. As a fellow gearhead with various sound tech, I was just picturing what was going on in the background. I mean, that you remember that 12 years ago?
Yeah, I do, man. That was before Al Gore invented the internet, so it was effectively conference call technology that was limited to how many people could call in. And yeah, I remember scrambling and sweating. It was a good thing there was no video because I was in full-blown panic mode. And we just, as the technology got better, the internet got faster. It was probably just a dial-up back then, honestly. And yeah, crazy times when we started. But yeah, we were committed, myself and Power Practice team, to bring in a show that was topical, controversial, like you're doing now, was going to help docs do a better job in the practice, get them more patients, take better care of the patients they have. We talked a lot about revenue, how to get more of it, staff challenges. It was so much like about there still is a lot to talk about.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because, on that first show, Gary, you asked a bunch of people to just kind of weigh in from the audience, and you asked the question of how do you see the future of the eye care industry? And I think your follow-up question was, if your son or daughter was asking you, hey, would you recommend that I become an optometrist? Would you tell them to be an OD? What do you think about that now? And how would you answer that question? Let me flip it back on you. If you're in your shoes now, 12 years later, what do you think?
I would guess, I haven't listened to that show in 12 years. I would guess that if we were to do, I'll give you my response in a second, but I would to guess if we were to play that back now, we'd probably get a lot of the same responses. And it's because optometrists in our industry was really, really slow, really, like there's so much inertia in this industry, and it just hampers a lot of expansion of the docs. And I would guess a lot of the concerns or the future was not that positive because of things like managed vision care and internet sales and all those sorts of things, which are still here. They haven't changed. I don't know when Warby launched, but at some point after it probably came up, if not that episode, on another one, they're still here. I still believe that the entire industry is so under indexed that there is room for a lot more growth in all the various channels that we have. I just think we're just not nearly maximizing our potential. So I don't know what I said at the time, but there's a song, "The Future's So Bright, I Gotta Wear Shades." And I probably said that because when you asked me the question, that's the first thing I thought of. So I said it, say it again. I think it's a great industry. My kids have made the career decision not to become ODs, and I was bummed at the time, and they're doing great. They're happy. They got great careers. So that's all good.
But you wouldn't advise them against it.
Oh no, I had this whole master plan of how I could bring them into the business. And, they just didn't have an interest in it, which I was kind of bummed about because I think it is a great career still. It was then. I think it still is. I think it's more so now. I think, honestly, I think it's better now. We've gotten through a lot of, but here's how I look at it. If you had a small business and you made it through COVID, you're certain, and you made it through, like, whether we went through recession or not, we went through a tough economy for a while.
Yeah.
If you make it through COVID and almost a recession, you're in a pretty good freaking business.
Yeah.
Like you're not recession proof, you're recession resistant. You're COVID resistant. You're not COVID proof.
Yeah. You've built the muscle on some level to be able to be flexible enough to roll with the punches.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a touring musician, and pre-COVID, we would have discussions, what do you think the future of the music business is, with guys streaming and nobody selling records anymore. And COVID came, a lot of venues that we used to play in shut down. Music is still here. Touring is still happening. Streaming is still happening. And the cream rises to the top. Yeah. Look,
Taylor Swift just said, that was one of the major events of 2023, right? The highest ever grossing concert tour.
Yeah, she created her own economy, right? Good for her. I don't particularly dig the music, but that doesn't matter.
My 8-year-old daughter does.
Yeah, well, that says volumes, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm not.
You're saying you're not opening for Taylor Swift. We shouldn't be looking.
Yeah, I don't see that happening. But if she happens to listen to this, I'm available. And I up my keyboard for you. There's just more opportunities as technology changes. More opportunities. You got to leverage what comes out. It's not all going to work. You got to take calculated risks, and I've been saying that since I started consulting, which is probably 30 years ago. It hasn't changed. It's a great industry. I would, if somebody has kids, and if you're a doc, would you tell your kids, tell them to be an OD. It's a great profession, man. It's got so many pluses. And it's so easy just to focus on the negatives with anything in life, right? And it's not all puppy dogs and ice cream on optometry. There's challenges, but talk to your friends, your other entrepreneurial friends, regardless of what they do. They could be a dentist, or they could own a tire store, a bike store, a donut shop, or a gas station. Everybody's got challenges. It's tough being an entrepreneur. in owning your own business, but that's always been the case. There's always going to be new challenges. You got to step up, you got to face them, and life goes on, and you'll do fine.
Yeah. And now, so Gary, today, as you look at the industry from the vantage point that you have today, and maybe not, and I'm sure that vantage point has evolved over the course of the last decade. Where do you see the biggest opportunities? If I'm an OD and I have, and yes, I'm kind of operating in my own business and I'm rolling with the punches and I've made it through COVID. What do you see on the horizon?
So funny you should say vantage point and horizon, because you can see I'm sitting in my treehouse.
Yeah, the plug for the fact that the show is on YouTube.
Yes, there we go. You can, if you go on YouTube, you can see Gary is sitting in a treehouse. Yeah, Gene, who would have thought 12 years ago I'd be broadcasting as a guest on my own show from a treehouse, right? So talk about things you know, right? I was in a sound booth with the first one that wasn't working because the door wouldn't shut. So yeah, things have certainly evolved. So the vantage point is it kind of relates to being in a treehouse. I think that there is a growing need for specialty services that is wide open. We'll talk about myopia in a second because that's my real passion, the treehouse eye. But if you turn the clock back to 12 years, maybe we start talking about, maybe on the show, I had a couple of dry eye guests that came on. We talked about the opportunities of dry eye. We talked about a dry eye center of excellence.
Mm-hmm.
Here we are 12 years later, still talking about dry eyes. And
we're still talking about dry eye. Yes, exactly.
Still talking about it, right? And dry eye center of excellence, I probably know 5 of them within the country. So still big opportunities there. TBI, BV, VT, pick your alphabet acronym. Mm-hmm. So many opportunities for specialty care. When I say opportunities, the first thing that comes to my brain is, because I have a strong business background, is the financial aspect of it. That said, and getting back to what I tell my kids, I mean, do something that you like. And it's really rewarding to do some of these specialty cares, because these patients come in, dry eye patients come in, they're pretty miserable when they come in. And if you do your job well, they're pretty happy when they leave. BV patients come in with their retractable headaches and learning challenges. When you're done, they're a heck of a lot better.
Yeah.
Myopia, you don't get the instant myopia management. You don't get the instantaneous benefit because it's a lifelong disease. But you know in your heart you're really doing the right thing for these kids by not letting their eyes get bigger. So Treehouse Eyes is not 12 years old. Well, the idea was about 20 years old when I started thinking about it, but we launched the company about 8 years ago. And are there myopia centers of excellence? Yeah, now there's about 70 franchisees around the country that are doing it for real. So lots of opportunities with any of the subspecialties. And the vantage point that I take from Treehouse, it's almost a cliche, but you got to rise above and you got to climb up the ladder to the treehouse. You got to put the work in to get the specialties going. Companies like us can help docs with myopia specifically. And if you don't work with us, jump into another subspecialty. It's something that is ours to lose, especially myopia. I mean, if there was ever a subspecialty right in an OD's wheelhouse, it's myopia, man.
Well, so let's talk a little bit about myopia, because I think that, and I've been in the industry for about a decade, and we worked with clients kind of in various segments of the industry. The reality is that it's become extra hot as a topic, and people come to me all the time, looking to do myopia management in my practice. And I think the first of all, there's obviously a need, but I don't know that the patient is so solution aware right now. It's not, some people have likened it to braces in the context of, it's just like that. It's a specialty service and it has a meaningful benefit for your kid. But I think that most parents know what braces are and what they do. At least the data that I have shows that, there's not that many parents that are solution aware.
100% agree. So, and that's one of the challenges with docs that attempt to do myopia management on their own, and they start using analogs like braces. That's a bad idea, because that takes you down a path of frustration of, you say to the doc, what's the number one challenge you have? Well, the parents tell me they never heard about this before.
Mm-hmm.
And I bring up braces, like braces for your eyes. You're going down, you come to a fork in the road, you're going the wrong way. You have to start the discussion with something that our consumer research, which we spent a ton of time on, a lot of money before we launched, showed that you have to start right out of the blocks. You got to talk about the pathology aspect of this, and what's the wisdom for the parents. It's, you can do the right thing for your kid. Yeah, it's tough to envision your 7-year-old daughter as a 50-year-old woman. I understand that, but now's the time you want to get in front of it. Just like the pediatrician is working with your kids now to make sure they turn into healthy adults, we want to make sure they have healthy adult eyes specifically. So you have to take that approach. It's a long view approach. Braces are relatively short term. Typical braces therapy might be 1.5 to 2 years, and then maybe retainers, maybe not, depends.
Mm-hmm.
As far as solution aware, 30% of kids in the US wear braces already, right? I mean, it's when I first saw that number, I said that can't be right, because the average fee is about $6,500. That can't be correct.
Right.
It is.
Yeah.
It's absolutely correct. We've had orthodontists work with us for consulting, not on the, more on the kind of presenting.
Yeah, presenting solution standpoint.
Yeah, so it's something that the docs that don't do it, it's almost like an excuse. I don't want to put all the time in, and then the parents say, I'll just want to think about it. I'll come home, and if it's not covered by insurance, I don't want to do it. I'm not saying our doctors don't face that. They do, but they are prepared as a franchisee to get that mom across the finish line by leveraging a brand. The challenge docs have when they do stuff like this by themselves is they're the lone wolf in their community who has put a flag in the ground and say, I do myopia management. The mom goes on Google, they see nobody else doing it. Or if it comes up, everybody's telling a different story. Some guys use the ortho K analogy for braces like you do. A handful talk about disease. Some guys are atropine, some guys are mysight. Everybody's got a different story. You go to a LASIK surgeon, and it's all about not these words, but it's all about throw your glasses away and freedom from glasses and change your life. They all have a really strong USP, unique selling proposition to the prospective LASIK patient. Myopia docs don't have that. If you join with an organization like us, company like us, that's all that we do. Now you're not the lone wolf. You're part of something that has credibility in your community, because they can search Google, or there's docs all over the place.
I want to grab onto something you just said, which is, kind of this community of doctors. And I agree with you. I don't think, I think you guys do a nice job at Treehouse of kind of having a unified message. And I agree, there's not really a unified message across the industry. What have you found that works? When you tell a patient, about this, you said start with the pathology. Dig in a little bit more into that.
Yeah. So there's no one thing that works. It's a continuum. And the way we do it is the challenge that docs have, and I totally get it and I understand where it comes from, is they'll spend 45 minutes talking to a parent. It's the first time that they've heard pathology or whatever the doc might be saying. It's overload for the parent. They talk about pathology. They talk about 3 different ways you can treat it. There's 6 different treatment payment methodologies. If you do the math, there's now 18 different decision branches he gave to the parents. So the decision is to not make a decision. And when we think about it, which is code for the parents of, I'll come back next year when my kid's eyes get worse. We'll have the same discussion, lather, rinse, and repeat.
Yes.
Like that's what happens.
Yeah.
So there's no magic bullet in this. The thing is, it has to be a continuum of information for the parents. So what we do is we start the process with a telehealth education process. So before they even get to the doc's office, before they walk in the door, they've been pre-educated by us. So the journey usually is, as you know, on your side of the fence, they'll Google around a little bit. We do a lot of SEO work. They'll wind up at Treehouse Eyes, our company site. We educate them the proper way. We create some modicum of interest at that point. Then they go on to the doctor's website. They look around the doctor's website. Now, at that point, this is kind of key. The content on the doctor's website syncs up with ours. Now, it's the second time I've heard the same message. That's pretty important.
Mm-hmm.
They click book an appointment. They're booking an appointment with us first. And we are going to pre-screen, pre-educate. So when they walk into the doctor's office, we'll set up the appointment for the parent at the doctor's office. When they walk in and the doctor has the discussion, first of all, they walk in and it looks like the websites that they've seen. That's the third exposure. They have a discussion with the doctor or staff with the same language. That's the fourth exposure. So now it's not the first time they've heard about it. It's the fourth or fifth time they've heard about it.
Gary, I want to point something out because I think and it's funny because telehealth has come up as a problem, as a perceived problem for the industry lots and lots of times, but the data consistently, and we have LASIK providers who are clients of ours and that kind of thing, and we see the data consistently shows that when you have a specialty need that's a high ticket item, most of the time, you're going to get somewhere between 20 and 30% bump in your close rate if you start with a virtual telehealth appointment. And so, what you're describing is brilliant, but it's actually completely in line with what the nation's top LASIK surgeons have figured out, what the nation's top cataract surgeons have figured out, and certainly what some of the nation's top dry eye providers have figured out is that a telehealth appointment to pre-educate, pre-qualify, and really pre-plan the visit that the patient is going to have when they're exploring this in your office, it puts them in a completely different mindset as opposed to, I'm here to get my kid glasses. Let's talk for 30, 40 minutes about something that I wasn't really quite ready for.
Yeah, we've had interesting that 20, 30% bump. That's exactly what we see in the close rate.
Nice.
So, the benefits of doing it, not only do you get a higher close rate, you get it with less time because all the questions that we're going to asked and answered. So instead of a doctor spending 45 minutes, they do their usual 20, 25-minute consultation. Everything's been covered before they walked in. They have the information. It was hard for us to execute, but easy for the parents and easy for the docs to use. So yeah, we're seeing the exact same thing. So the doctors don't work with us. It's, what they can get from this is it's not just one exposure. It's got to take multiple exposures. And if you don't have the resources that we do as a big company, it's just going to take you more time.
Yeah. And sometimes the patient's going to lose interest when you mention the price tag, which is what I want to talk about next, because I have heard this concern from lots of our clients when they say things like, I added myopia management and I'd love to grow it, but the reality is it kind of feels like a waste of time because we're just, even when we talk to the patients about it or when we talk to the parents about it, as soon as they hear the price tag, they're gone, they're out, they're not interested anymore.
Yeah, well, that relates to some of the stuff before you got to the price. That's part of it. Okay. The second thing is how is the price being presented? What is the actual fee? Is a part of it. Payment plans, options to pay, things like that, because they're used to that with the dental model. A lot of these kids wear braces already, so they're used to that. And the big piece is when the parent says, I just want to think about it, what follow-ups do you have in place? Because you still educated that parent. Even if that was your first shot, with us, it was our first shot was on our website. But if that was the first one for you, you still have opportunities to continually educate the parent. What we do is we created this really cool automated marketing platform for those who say, gee, you kind of caught me off guard with the price, whatever the response may be. I got to check with my spouse, my insurance company. I got to check the schedule for soccer lessons and ballet, but whatever the case might be. So we have them before they leave, we have them scan a QR code. And we created this software. It's really cool. It's an automated marketing platform where without the parents installing any apps or visiting a website or opting in, we send them a really super high-end, professionally done educational video, short video, couple minutes. If they don't watch it, we automatically send them a reminder. If they watch it and don't respond, we send them another video. So we continue the education. Yeah. And we found that, and they can opt out at any time. This is not like in your face. You got to watch it. We spent a lot of time on the content. This was a 2-year project. What's involved with content development to get it exactly super tight, get the right words right. colors, get all of it. We have it down to 7 really powerfully done videos that help. And the docs that use Treehouse Amp, which is what we call it, the automated marketing platform, have parents who then call back and say, okay, now I get it. And they can share the videos with their spouse. So yeah, it is going to be a shock for parents if it's the first time that they're hearing it and they're coming in expecting to do a $30 copay with their managed vision care to get glasses, and you drop a $3,000 bomb for something.
Yeah, right.
We're of course not going to say yes. Who would say yes? I wouldn't say yes to that.
Yeah, so it's funny you say 7 because that's the magic marketing number of, you got to have seven impressions before action, right? That's the standard. I think that's been the marketing adage for like 45 years that marketers have said, you got to see it X number of times. So let's say you get really good at conversion rate. What's the best that you've seen? 10 patients walk in the door. If you're running like the best myopia center of excellence, 10 patients walk in the door, they're candidates. How many of them become patients?
Let me give you some historical data because we track that obviously really carefully, right? Well, we opened up our flagship centers. Those are the 2 in Washington, D.C., with a third one somewhere else on the way this year. Can't tell you the location yet, but trust me, you'll know about it when we open. Big grand opening party. When we opened up, brand new category, we're still learning. We're learning to buy. We don't have all these automated platforms. We were closing about 25%. So I'm bearing myself to earth, right? Here's the myopia Jedi with 25% close rates. Oh man, this was a mistake. We're going to burn through cash and go out of business. We started measuring, fine tuning, tweaking, talking to parents who didn't close, getting more intel. We got up to about 50%. So we find now with docs out in the general ecosystem that 40 to 50% is what most docs outside our network are getting. Our docs who work our program pretty hard and use, not pretty hard, like an average doc will get about 70% will close. Docs that work our program really hard use all the tools because we got Triage Amp is one of many. We have online graphical tools, we have treatment protocols, we have virtual counselors that can do some of the work, that after visit work for you. If you use all the tools, those guys get to about 80, 85%. And now what I'm most proud of are our own centers. Now that we have a known brand in the area, in the DC area, we're up to about 90%. And I'm not making that number up.
Not 9 people out of 10 that you pitch a myopia management program will spend $3,000 or more on it.
In our company centers.
Right.
Franchisees are going to get 70 to 75%.
But you even mentioned 40 to 50% for most docs. I'd be curious to hear from the listeners if that's what they're seeing, because what I've heard from doctors I talk to or people who approach us for marketing help, it's like, man, like I got, when I ask them what their conversion rate is, they'd be lucky if they got 10%.
Yeah. They're probably some of the first docs we've talked about where they have nothing or really ineffective language on their website, social media. The last myopia post was 3 years ago. Docs like that, that's probably, and I'm not slamming, like their heart's in it. They want the kid to move forward. They feel
well, and they might have gotten the training, but they just haven't really gotten the thought around how do you actually present it outside the practice and then even inside the practice. Last topic on this, and I kind of want to give, I know that, there's obviously a little bit of a bias, and of course, I think there's a tremendous benefit to people being part of Treehouse Eyes, but if they're not, what's one thing you would tell, and we're going to move on from myopia, but if I am trying to launch a myopia practice and maybe I've launched and it's not going so well, what's one thing they should where should they look for that untapped potential, and which opportunity should they really try to uncover? What's one thing you'd tell them to change?
Well, I got to make it 2 things. Biggest opportunity for new kids, for new patients, is inside their own practice. I spoke to a doctor yesterday, told me 8% of his patients are kids. And my first question is, what percentage of 35 to 55 years old? Like what percentage? So he goes like, oh, it's everybody. It's like the other 92%. I said, okay, so they are the decision makers. Those are the parents. So your message, when you want to get a new myopia patient, don't think they have to be new to your kind of practice ecosystem. Get the kids that a parent you already have. Like, that's where you want to start. Those are the easy ones. They trust you already. If they came back to see you for another pair of glasses, I guess you didn't really suck. Okay, right? And then the next thing is when they finally come in, you got to keep it simple. It is something new to the parents. You have to use, unless you're talking to an engineer kind of mentality, but you got to use really simple language. You got to keep a simple fee structure. You have to be careful and consciously eliminate the obstacles, which can be almost invisible. Sometimes you don't see them, the obstacles to getting the mom or the dad to say yes, they're ready to affordable treatment. And the big ones are just overcomplicating things.
Is that the language you're using? Is that the words?
Yeah, language. Language. The other thing is you gotta tell, since it's new to the parents, you gotta tell them what to do. You can't say to the mom, well, there's 3 ways we could treat your kid. You got atropine, soft multifocal, or ortho. Okay, which one do you want to do? It's 3 ways we could do it. Tell the parent, you could say there's 3 ways we could do it. Here's what I recommend you do. X. You got to tell them. It's the first time they've heard it. They can't make a decision. And if you start having complex pricing schemes, scheme's not the right word. I don't mean the North Jersey scheme. That's kind of what they call them in the UK. We work over there too. If you have complicated pricing charts and it looks like an IRS tax table, you're doomed to fail. Keep it.
I gotcha. Okay, good. So I think, I'll put a pin in myopia, and I want to ask you a little bit about your consulting experience, because it's so vast and you've had the opportunity to help so many practices. Well, you tell me, how many practices, ballpark, do you think that you personally have had the opportunity to help? Not just Power Practice, but you personally.
I don't know, 2,500, 3,000. It's a lot of doing this a long time, bro.
Yeah. I know. That's again, as I said in the beginning of the show, honored to have you on. Let me dig in a little bit into that experience, Gary. I think it's almost like you walk into a practice. First impression, you walk into a practice. What are the first 3 things you look for to see, again, if you're lifting the hood and you're trying to find some of the untapped potential? What does that look like?
So interesting. If you would have asked me that question when I started consulting, I would have mentioned cosmetic things like, stained ceiling tiles, dust bunnies in the corner, outdated POP, slots on a frame board with no frames, physically obvious misses, at least obvious to an outsider, but not to somebody who lives in the office every day. You ask me now when you say walk into the office, I think walk into the office today is a web page or social media. To me, that's walk into the office. That's the first impression. Today, that's my opinion. So I think that's got to be really top notch. And there are some websites out there that are really amazing on one side that are easy to navigate, great experience, great just look and feel, and just everything. And there are others that are horrible. I think they got a free website from somebody literally 30 years ago. There's typos, there's outdated pictures. That's the new walk in the door first impression. If you ask me, second impression, if I did a web social media thing and I walk through the door, then it gets back to the physical, tangible things. And then the next one is it's a very people-driven profession. So the way that I'm greeted, if I'm greeted at all, the quintessential worst way, you have to staff the old-fashioned behind like the glass wall kind of thing.
Oh my God, yeah.
And that's still not as many as when I started, but that's some of that's still out there. Be like a warm personal greeting.
But that came back, by the way. The glass wall came back pre-COVID for a period of time. We're all putting up, the plastic barriers and
good
back down.
Yeah, good point. Some docs have not taken it down. That's personal choice. They gotta live with that. But it's got to be warm and inviting, and feel like you're in the right place. And you think about, I always like to use analogs from other industries. What are some retail events that you enjoy, spaces you like walking into, that you look forward to walking into, and why is that, and how can you replicate that? Right. So if if you imagine like walking into your favorite coffee shop, the first thing is you're probably going to smell the coffee. So what is the scent when you walk into the office? I mean, it kind of hits you in the face. It's either stale, dirty carpet, or it's white tea, with a scent air machine, right? It's kind of the first one. It's all the senses. The visual one is easy. You see it, right? What's happening auditorily? Is there music? Is there noise? Is there quiet? And that's a personal preference, depends on the audience that you're in. But it's all those things. And then the people thing overrides all that. So what is the greeting, if any? If somebody is on the phone when you go up to the desk, do you have a sense that you're interrupting this person? Are there post-it notes all over the front desk that look like it's harried and chaotic? Or is it clean? Is it up to date? Is it just welcoming, right? And you feel like you're in the right spot. It's really one of the moments of truth in a practice. The other thing is the exit. What's the exit like? It's the same thing. You get asked the same question. What's the exit and the follow-up like, if any? Now that you just took my credit card, am I ever going to hear from you again?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot of consumer behavior studies that actually focus on exactly that moment. And it turns out that one of the most memorable pieces of the visit, in really almost any experience where you're there for an extended period of time, is your last impression. Not just your first, but your last impression. So there's a lot of studies around that. And you think about, for many practices, that last impression's an afterthought, because the lady who's, swiping your credit card is also greeting patients, is also answering the phones, and she just wants you the hell out of there.
Yeah, and our checkout procedures can be really complicated. Having to take measurements and insurance questions and all sorts of things. So you really need to work to the extent you can. There's going to be limitations, so streamline it as best you can. You think about when think about what's changed in the restaurant business, right? So it used to be they bring your bill over. You kind of look through the bill. You hand the guy a card, and he comes back, and you got to sign a card. Now they have with Square or whatever, like they give it to you. It's like right there while you're standing there. You can sign off on it. It's all one step, right? It's just easy, right? Now the fact that they're hovering over you for the tips is a little bit uncomfortable, but
yeah. But that may actually be a tactic in many cases. I sometimes wonder when that happens, if they're just watching me tip them, does my tip go up or down?
Yeah. Yeah, that may be a topic for a show, or any of these charging tips. Everybody else is.
Well, or credit card surcharges, right? And but that would be interesting. Tip your doctor. How was your visit? 5 stars, 20%.
Yep. So, what can we do to streamline it, make it more friendly, make it easier, make it less stressful? And yeah, I'm not surprised there's research. I think it's pretty important. I think like the Apple Store does a great job. Everything is like right there on the iPad. Yeah, it's their business, and it's totally on brand to do it that way. That makes sense. And that may not work in an D's office. But we could certainly, I would bet that anybody listening or watching this, if you had a staff meeting and you said, okay, we're going to map out what is a typical eyeglass patient exit look like? How many steps are involved? Get really granular. Okay, so first we have them sit down. Do we pull out the chair for the patient, or do we let them pull it out themselves? Do we see them receipt themselves? Do we get them something to drink while they're waiting in glass? Do we offer a bottle or whatever it may be? Like as many steps as you can do. Let's say you come up with like 25 steps. If you challenge your staff, how do we get from 25 steps to 15 steps so we can make it more efficient? You'll be able to do it. It's just not something you would think to focus any energy on. But yeah, it's important, man. It's you want them to come back when they pick up their glasses next week. That's when you sell the second pair, right? That's not a dispensing visit. That's to sell the second pair visit.
Right. And nobody thinks of it that way. I don't think, or it's not very common to look at it that way.
Right. And if they didn't have a good exit with the first pair, good luck with the second pair. Right.
Right. I mean, good luck having them come back in a year.
Yeah, I don't want to do this again. It was onerous the first time. You're lucky I'm coming back at all.
All right. So I think what you just described, that the entirety of that kind of experience, both from an aesthetic and an emotional, and what kind of feel are you looking to have in the practice? Obviously, that has an impact on the likelihood that that patient's going to buy and spend money, the likelihood that they're going to, the likelihood that they're going to return. I get it. There's revenue implications. What are other revenue, like we'll call them just like, maybe not so obvious, but oftentimes overlooked opportunities for revenue that people just kind of leave on the table?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is we don't look at patients as lifetime assets. We look at it as today's visit, kind of like even the way you teed it up. It's almost like doctors will think like, what else can I sell a patient today? I like to look at it as, I want this patient never to leave my practice, never.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I want to tee them up for a lifetime of care. So I'm taking a long-term view. It's a blue chip stock, right? It's not like a .com is it going to go up, 30% in the next 2 weeks. Let's have it go 5% a year for the next 20 years that I have the practice, and I'll never have with patient leave, have them come back. So what can I do to set things up that kind of relates to the exit and the entrance and make it inviting, all that sort of stuff. So I think almost the way that we frame those questions is part of the challenge that we have. Like, how do we sell more Plano sunglasses today? That would be nice. I'd rather have the revenue today than next week or next year. I'm there, but don't stop there. If you don't get the Plano sunglasses today, what can you do to make sure you retain the patient? Like, they got between leaving your office today after the exam and if they come back next year, which is more likely 14 or 15 months, this statistically, think of how many impressions they're going to get from competitors.
Of course.
Right? Like, they're driving home and they're going to hear a corporate radio commercial on the drive home. Like, did I go to the right place? A week later, they're watching TV. They're going to see a commercial for a competitor. They're going to get stuff in their email. So where are you over the course of this year? Are you staying front of mind? Because your competitors are nipping at your heels to get your patients. So if you don't take a long-term view, you don't own your patients. You just get to rent them. That's it. So, what are you doing to renew the lease every year? Make sure they come.
Exactly.
And then to that point, when they come back, give them something new. Have a discussion about something new. There's always new stuff to talk about. I don't think you have to change your frame inventory every week, 3 months, 4 months, but keep things fresh. You could take this, theoretically take the same frames you have, just move them around, like move some left to the right, because they're not in there every day like you are. So you can get bored with it pretty quickly, sometimes too quick. But if a great excuse to communicate is if you take in a new line of frames, let the patients know you're bringing a new service, you bring us in with treehouse eyes and now do myopia management. Any excuse to communicate with the patients over the course of the year, you should take it. Absolutely, you should take it.
Yeah. So Gary, you stopped practicing when? In your own practice?
So you never forget the first day and the last day. Okay, September 24th, 2004, 4 p.m.
Wow.
Yep.
So go back just for a second and give yourself as an OD some advice that, what do you wish you knew back then that you've now learned over the course of, the last however many years since then, since September 24th?
I worked really hard to build the business. Don't forget your family, right? It's kind of hard as an entrepreneur. You got to wear a lot of hats, man, and put a lot of hours, but don't forget the other side of the equation. So that's kind of one thing if I go back and do over. Absolutely. The other thing is we were pretty good with this in my practice, but we always could have been better. Calculator risks are okay. You have very little to lose as an entrepreneur when you take calculator risks. You could lose money, you lose some time. In our case, you could lose some patients if you make a mistake. If you calculate the risks and you look at the equation, the risks are usually pretty small and easily recovered from. And then the other thing we did well, which you can always do better, is invest heavily in people. It's cliche, get the right people on the bus and get them in the right seats, and train them well. We had a really good staff. I think a big reason for our success was we had a great staff, but we always could have done better. I think that's a big piece. We sometimes as entrepreneurs focus too much on us. But in a lot of offices, sometimes the staff spends more time with the patients than the doctors do.
Sure.
So, make sure those soft skills, I talked about greetings and things like that. Make sure you get the right. I've always advocated hire for personality, train a skill, like always. Still, even triage, same thing. So do that like to the extreme. And yeah, it's kind of tough because you get people who literally don't know their OD from their OS. It's a lot of training. It's tough, but work in a training program that you can replicate and you can keep reusing it. We finally got to that. It was easier to bring in unskilled help to work with us. So,
yeah, and I don't want to undersell those three things that you just said, because I think they're so important, is to think of the entrepreneur as a whole person, right? A mother, a father, a family member, a person who is trying to get healthy, and to think of yourself as that entrepreneur who, needs all of those things, not just a successful business. So don't forget to take care of yourself, take calculated risks, if I understood you correctly, and make sure that you know what that risk is, but don't be afraid to take risks. And then the third is, hire good people and make sure that you're giving them all the tools they need to succeed.
Yeah. And also, with the good people, pay them a lot of money, like pay them more than you think they're worth. And if you're looking at, pay scales, like what is the OD down the street pay his receptionist? You may want to look at what is a 5-star hotel pay their receptionist, because that's the quality person you want. You got to pay a lot more for it, like most likely. And you can expect a lot more. That's fair.
Mm-hmm.
You should get a lot more, and the dividends should pay off for you. It's absolutely worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. Gary, I mean, you and I could probably keep talking for another couple hours, but I think I was given the, as I said in the beginning of the show, we surveyed the listeners, and there was a specific show like that. We got to make sure we stay under. So here's what I'm going to do. We're going to have, I think, in a future show, not too far away, a panel on myopia management. And I'd love to, some of the things you shared today are great to add to that conversation. So we'll invite some docs who are trying it and succeeding, and some docs who are trying it and not succeeding, and, and hear their perspectives. And, I'd love to have you weigh in. In general, what we'll do is we'll post some contact information in the show notes. I do want to encourage all of our listeners to check out the show, both on YouTube and on the website, because we'll post a bunch of show notes. We'll post some free resources if we're able to. And, again, we're excited for this season of the Power Hour. There's a lot of really interesting and unique opportunities and topics that we need to be able to discuss. And it's all in the spirit of helping you find untapped potential in your practice. I'm honored to be your host. I'm certainly honored to do the show with you, Gary. How did it feel 12 years later from when you started the show? How did it feel to be a guest on the show?
Yeah, it's strange. It's good trade. I'm glad you're taking the helm. I mean, the show's going to do great under your guidance. So glad it's you. It's a virtual baton pass, I guess. Because
I'll take it. I'll take it. For those who are watching on YouTube, get it, plug in.
Yeah, I should have had one. We'll do it officially when we do the myopia show. I'll get the time.
That's great.
But yeah, it feels good, man. I'm glad, we're talking about staying up to date, right? So instead of using crappy dial-up conference call technology, we've really graduated, and you're great with technology, obviously, and marketing. It's kind of your thing. And
I'm super excited to be here with you, but I'm also excited to be here with our listeners. And again, total honor for me to host the Power Hour. And to take that baton, Gary. So I am looking for feedback from the listenership. Go to the website, find the Power Hour podcast, and we'll make sure that we take your feedback, and we make sure that shows that come up are around topics that you, the audience, really cares about. My name's Eugene Shatsman. I'm honored to be here today with Gary Gerber. And thank you all for listening. We'll again post contact information in the show notes. Visit us there. And we're excited to kick off this season of the Power Hour in this amazing way. Thank you, Gary, for joining us today.
Pleasure, Eugene. Thanks for having me, man. Good luck. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you. If you're enjoying the Power Hour, you might be asking yourself, what can I do today in my practice that's going to make an impact? So over the years, the practice coaches and consultants at the Power Practice have helped thousands of practices improve. And they often start with one thing, and that's a proprietary methodology called the Practice Profitability Audit. For about $2,400, they look at all of your practice numbers and they stack them up against where a practice of your size could and should be. It takes about a week for them to do. And because they're so experienced, they know what your potential looks like. And they're often able to take that $2,400, multiply it several times over, and hand it right back to you in found profits in your practice in months. Not years, in months. But you get to keep the much more profitable practice for years afterwards. But here's the best news. I'm going to tell you how you can have the Practice Profitability Audit completely free. See, we're really trying to get people onto the show website, which is, by the way, powerpractice.com, and then you click the Power Hour podcast button. The reason we want you there is because I want the audience participation. I want to hear your feedback, and I want to know how to make the show better for you. So you can interact with us, send us your feedback, offer your suggestions, and for a limited time when you go there, you can also request a Practice Profitability Audit for free. Right. We're going to cover 100% of the cost, but only for 5 people per month. And 5 people per month is all we really have capacity for because this is a resource-intensive audit, and the Power Practice coaches are generally busy serving their clients. But for 5 people a month, they've agreed to cover 100% of the cost, so it's totally free to you. So again, take action immediately in your practice. Go to powerpractice.com, click on the Power Hour podcast, interact with us, but also request a Practice Profitability Audit today.